Welcome to our virtual tour of examining power and influence in group dynamics. So, what are group dynamics? Well, group dynamics refer to the actions and behaviors that occur as a result of individuals coming together to form a group. So, what about power and influence in groups? Robert Dahl defines power as an ability to get another person to do something that he or she would not otherwise have done. And dictionary.com defines influence as the capacity or power of persons or things to be a compelling force on the actions and behaviors of others. You look confused. Maybe I should explain it a different way. Power is the capacity of a person or a group to influence others. Power is not the act of changing others' attitudes or behaviors, but merely the potential to do so. Influence is actually getting permission from others to work with you in accomplishing a goal. Power then becomes influence when the person agrees to behave according to the desires of the power holder. This is done through social influence and power dynamics. Let's take a look at this clip from a funny sitcom called The Office. Pay close attention to what happens with power and influence in this group.
Seems like a basic reward system where you give us points and then we redeem those points for prizes.
You're exactly right, and you get a point.
Oh, how does one get a point?
I've outlined the exact parameters in an email, so check your spam folders, but basically, you do your job better, you get points. So, collect 15 points and redeem them for this polar bear. John Irving collected works, 22 points. Or you can pool your points and redeem 55 for this maternity shirt.
How about you want us to work harder, pay us more?
I can't.
This point system is really insulting.
Ooh, well, I didn't mean to offend you, and I hope you'll forgive me because I am very, very sorry. 16 points.
It's a tablecloth.
What if we went all the way up to 500 points?
That's a crazy amount of points.
But what if?
Well, what do you want?
I don't know. For such a crazy number, I'd like something pretty crazy.
All right, for 500 points, I will wear a dress to work.
That's pretty good.
All right, for 5,000 points, I will let you tattoo whatever you want on the stern of the old SS Bernard. Here we go.
All right. Really? All right, and you are totally serious.
Swear to God, hope to die. Now let's get to work.
Wait, but you did say we could pool our points, right? In that case, let's get to work.
Yeah! Took him one day.
So, who do you think had the power and influence in that office? Is all this making sense to you? Well, the good news is that we have more information on this topic. Take a look at the stops we'll take on the tour. Casey will show us a model that takes a closer look at the sources of power. Andrea will talk about power styles and how they show up in groups. Matt is going to talk about the various tactics that people take in social influence. Are you ready? Great! First stop, Casey with sources of power.
Thanks, Charlotte. Let's start by using a graphic to explain the model of power in organizations. So it starts with the sources of power, or what can be called power bases. And it's how we look at using those sources of power to basically influence others and have power over them. It is also important to note that there are contingencies of power. Let's dive a little deeper. So starting with the sources of power, there's reward power, which essentially is the ability to give, for example, rewarding your employees by giving them a promotion or a bonus. Then there's coercion, which is the ability to take away, or punish someone. Think demoting them or creating a threat response environment. Then we have legitimate power, which is power given to you by an organization. So think you're CEO of an organization or president of the USA, someone who legitimately has power to influence. Then we have reverent power, which is power bestowed upon you by others. You can think about social media influencers or athletes, people that you really want to be like. And then finally, we have experts, which is basically the power of knowledge or being a subject matter expert. And you can influence people by knowing more than they do. So now that we understand the 5 power bases, we have to understand that power is translated into influence only under certain conditions. And those conditions are called the contingencies of power. So they essentially determine the extent to which you can leverage your power to actually make things happen. So let's dive into what these contingencies of powers are. The first is substitutability. Essentially, the more monopoly you have in your ideas or thoughts, the more power you have. If there's fewer options, you have more power. Centrality is essentially how your absence affects people. If you have high centrality, that means if you were to be absent one day, you would have a larger effect. Discretion is essentially autonomy. When you have total discretion and you are totally autonomous to make decisions, you have more power and your decisions can potentially affect more people. Finally, there's visibility. So the more people know you, the more power you have. So with that, we have a clear understanding of the model of power in organizations. Now you'll be visiting Andrea, and she's going to take us through power styles and groups. Over to you, Andrea.
Thank you, Casey. One of the most interesting things I came across when researching power styles was the question, are power styles a part of someone's personality, or is it just a behavior? What I learned is that people can change their style situationally and can learn how to adapt to certain styles, suggesting that they are more likely behaviors. But I'm probably getting ahead of myself. Hopefully I can shed some more light on this for you. The table you see here represents the 3 different power styles, how they can impact your team, and the most common situations you will experience them in. Someone using the non-assertive or passive approach is trying to be agreeable, polite, and deferential. They are trying to avoid problems by not taking a stand or being unclear about their position. The downside of this is that passive people often feel stressed or resentful. Their issues don't seem to go away since they are not clearly articulating their concerns. And their teammates may be satisfied to have their way momentarily, but they may also lose respect for them based on their perceived lack of engagement. Please keep in mind, this tactic may be appropriate in some situations. In highly emotional cases, a passive approach may be best to diffuse a difficult encounter, or when dealing with a superior, a passive response may be best from a subordinate. An individual using an aggressive approach addresses conflict by trying to win and refusing to compromise. The underlying emotions of the aggressive style are anger, insecurity, and a lack of trust. An aggressive person acts forcefully in situations. The downside to this is people on the other end may feel resentful, defensive, or withdrawn from a situation. An aggressive style can be useful in some circumstances. During an emergency or when progress has stalled and it is vital to move forward, aggressiveness can be positive. Lastly, people using the assertive style are communicating openly with concern for all parties involved. They take responsibility for their communication and their actions while keeping emotions at bay. An assertive person will focus on finding the best solution and is willing to listen and compromise. While not always successful, this style shows respect, fosters trust, and open communication within the group. A primary key to encourage assertiveness on a team is to equalize power. So, a fun fact I'd love to share with all of you is that differences in power styles are often attributed to personality, gender, or racial differences. An example of this assumption is that women often act more passively in business teams, causing some men to assume women are more passive. According to Kipnis, this stems from organizational power, not gender. When men and women have equal power in a situation, women are no more likely to act more passively. I love breaking stereotypes. Anyway, now that you are familiar with the different power styles, I'm curious how they're showing up on your team. What power style are you currently using? Something to think about. And with that, I would love to hand it over to Matt, who is going to share more with you about influence tactics. Take it away, Matt.
Thanks, Andrea. Research has explored a variety of social influence tactics that people use to achieve desired outcomes. I'm going to touch on 8 tactics that appear to be widely accepted by the scholars we reviewed. Legitimizing or legitimating, which uses claims of authority to make a request or appeal. Coalition, which pulls in help and partnership from people to influence others and or to increase one's own power. Consultation, which involves seeking advice and participation from others in a decision-making process, thereby bringing those participants into the outcome. Inspirational, which appeals to people's emotions by linking a desired outcome to their personal ideals or values.
personal appeals, which taps into a person's sense of loyalty or friendship to influence an outcome.
Ingratiation, aka sucking up or brown nosing, which attempts to garner support through friendliness and flattery. By the way, you look amazing today. Rational argument or rational persuasion, which uses logical arguments and facts to persuade someone. And exchange, which seeks support and compliance now in exchange for promised favors later.
Quid pro quo. I tell you things, you tell me things.
I'd gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Scholars David Kipnis and Stuart Schmidt have offered that these tactics could be grouped into hard tactics, soft tactics, and rational persuasion. Hard tactics generally use authority and position-related power and are more impersonal and sometimes manipulative, while soft tactics use personal power and power sharing. Thomas Case also looked at the effects of combining multiple tactics, finding that using a combination of tactics was generally more successful than just one, but it depended on the nature of the tactics. So 2 hard tactics might be no more effective than a single soft tactic. Several studies have sought to measure and compare the effectiveness of these different tactics. One such study by Cecilia Falb and Gary Uckel in 1992 suggests that inspirational appeal and consultation are the most effective influence tactics, and the least effective were legitimating and coalition tactics. Finally, as a generality, hard tactics have been found to be less effective than soft tactics. So Charlotte, can you give us a sense of where we might go from here in our tour?
I sure can. But wait, what did you think? Do you have a better sense of power and influence in group dynamics? What? You want more? Well, all right, we've got more. Tune in to your favorite Sakai Chi Prime channel to find a wealth of information on this topic. Happy reading!